department.
So if I may, and I don't know if the finance director's done, but I will give you a minute.
Want to take a motion for a 5-minute recess?
Would you like us to explain our recommendation, what she's calculating?
Sure.
The total amount that we're recommending for the school department is $315,000 less than what they requested. We increased the other sources of revenue, in particular the Medicaid revenue and the rental revenue, to offset some of the increase that we will be providing for the local appropriation. On that $315,000 in reductions that they would have to make, we do believe it's possible for them to make some of those recommendations, considering the recommendation from Walter Edge in the B&E report. If you remember correctly, in the B&E report on page 30, he cited that he found a turnover allowance of approximately $209,000 in staffing changes due to retirements, people taking unpaid leave of absences, changes in personnel, different people coming in at different rates. And he also put a footnote in there on that page that he recommended that this be factored into the budgeting process in the future, in future years. He also found $80,000, I believe, in the benefits section, and again attribute that to staff turnover, people leaving, not being eligible for the health care when they take the leave of absence, and turnover in staff where some people left taking family plan and other people were replaced with only single individual plans. The breakage, he calls it turnover allowance. Many school districts and municipalities and budget committees call it breakage. And in Lincoln, which is a district twice the size of North Smithfield, and the number of teachers and the budget itself, they do budget $400,000 in turnover. They basically reduce the anticipated salary account by $400,000, knowing that they will have turnover. And they base their number on historical usages in the past and the number of retirements that they get annually on an average, and work off of that. We're certainly not suggesting that we use the numbers that were used by Mr. Edge to start off with. Last year when we did our recommendation, we did factor in a small amount for what we call breakage, what Mr. Edge calls turnover allowance. So currently in the budget that has been submitted by the school department, there are 3 teachers who have already retired at step 11 or better, and who will be being replaced, hopefully, with much lower step teachers, earning far less money. If you said that the average between an 11th step and a 3rd step teacher was $40,000 in savings, then that's $120,000 of known reductions that could be made to the salary account at this time, not anticipating future turnover throughout the year for the leaves or additional retirements or resignations that might come in over the summer months. So I think that's partly where Mr. Edge came up with some of his numbers. So if you do factor in a dollar amount for the turnover allowance, representing at least the savings that you're going to get currently for the 3 retirements, and maybe a little buffer for what else might happen during the year for leave of absences or other retirements that might be coming in, it lessens the amount that you have to actually make in reductions in the line items. And we did identify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 8 or 9 what's referred to as object codes for the school committee to begin reviewing to come up with other possible reductions in those line items. If you hang on 1 minute, okay. The titles of the accounts are contracted services for psychologists, the conferences and workshops, the auditing services, copier maintenance service contracts, and the transportation account, the transportation fuel account, and the heating oil accounts, and also the unemployment account. Unemployment is currently budgeted $60,000. When we met with the superintendent in May, we asked if the budget was approved as is, how many people would not be coming back, and would everybody who's currently in here be here next year if the budget was approved as is? And I believe the answer was there would be 1 special ed teacher who would not be coming back, but that was based on no longer having the need for services of that individual due to the change in the population. So,
If the budget was funded.
if the budget's funded, but what I'm suggesting is that the budget can provide everything that it has in here, if we do start to do, as many other communities do, and budget breakage allowance, and then make reductions in these other line items that I believe hopefully it got to you, I did. Mrs. Todd a packet with those line items showing you the prior year historical history. And I think if you look at that, you might draw some conclusions that some of those might be safe to make some adjustments on. With the bus transportation, the contract came in and it was awarded less than what is currently budgeted for the bus transportation. Now, I'm not suggesting that you take that whole dollar amount and reduce that particular category by that full amount that it was, it's currently realizing savings in, but at least a portion of that could certainly be reduced. The transportation fuel, the most that's been spent on that is $115,000. There's $147 being budgeted for next year. It's run between $102,000, $100,000, and $115,000. It's the same number of buses, the same amount of mileage, and newer buses are being used, which hopefully will be more efficient. So we're thinking that, that might be something they could look at. We suggested the line items that they look at and consider. The unemployment compensation, I'm going to go back to that. So with the $60,000, if we truly can make reductions in the other line items and factor in the turnover allowance, then they should be able to bring everybody back. If they have a problem during the year, and if they do make an adjustment during the year, there are other options available as well. Last year, when we approved the budget, we were unaware that they were getting a credit from the insurance company of $134,000 that they then reduced their health care costs by. They should have a bank of money in the PSA account with the trust. And if during the year they find that some of these savings aren't going to materialize, they can request that that amount, the funds in the PSA account, be allocated monthly to reduce the premium that they have for the health care accounts. And I seem to remember that Karen gave a figure of maybe $50,000 to $80,000 in an account. So that could be an offset. With regard to the unemployment compensation, we strongly recommend that they rehire the teachers as quickly as possible. Last year, we did ask to see a list of the individuals who were laid off the prior year and actually how many of them came back. And I don't have that paperwork, unfortunately, any longer, but we were kind of staggered by that because literally for the teachers, I think the vast majority of them came back. And they ended up collecting their wages and the unemployment compensation. So if we could recall them back when we know for sure that there's going to be funding for them, even if you don't know the position that they're going to be going to, they could be called back to a position to be determined later when the bumping takes effect. But to pay people the unemployment benefits during the summer that's coming out of your operating budget, when the inevitable thing is you're going to need teachers in front of the classrooms, and a reduction of $315,000 hopefully would not result in 10 teachers being laid off. So we would like to see the school committee address what our recommendations were and particularly begin funding and putting in an allowance for breakage. And we think that beginning with these line items, but certainly not ending with them, if they don't feel that these are adequate to make the total cuts they need to in the reduction, there are other line items in the budget and other object codes as well that had smaller dollar values to them that could be reduced by in the other line items. I think the important thing to remember here is, and I'm going to kind of steal Mr. Vadney's comment that he made the other night. And the Budget Committee has tried to put forward a budget that provided each department of the town with essential funding for essential programs. And I know there is a number of people who don't believe we try to do that, but we actually do. We also try to see what the impact is down the road on the budgets. And our main concern is, and that's why we began this year by budgeting the capital in the budget. what Mr. Vagney commented on the other night about the fiscal tsunami coming down the road in a few years, I think if you read the commentary that was on our front page, we very politely suggested the same scenario was coming, except we pinned it down to 2018. We have been increasing spending, and it's been easy to do that because there hasn't been a direct impact on the taxpayers. The revenue from Darling Village and the new construction that has occurred in town, I don't think everybody understands, by law, that money has to be used to reduce the tax rate. You can only increase the levy by that certain dollar amount that we talked about at the beginning, and the budget that we proposed is within $80,000 of that cap, believe it or not. I think you have about $83,000 of leeway before you reach the cap on the current year tax levy. So,
Well, Mr. Clifford, we've already made amendments to your proposed budget. That's why I think we need to find out from the
Right.
finance director
Right.
where they stand exactly.
correct. So, but I'm just pointing out that that's the leeway you have, $83,000. And going forward, we're trying to get the budgets to be constrained as much as possible, because when we come to that point in time, where the new construction revenue dries up, and when the tangibles become depreciated, and when the state aid, which is going to come to a grinding halt in 2018, the funding formula for aid to education will be fully implemented in 2018. And the communities that are receiving extra revenue now from the state in state aid will not be getting that extra revenue due to the implementation of the new funding formula. It will have leveled out by that point. So there is a fiscal tsunami coming, and Paul said 1 or 2 years, we're going to say 2018. And if these budgets expand at the levels that they have, we're always going to be facing a significant tax increase from that point on, always. And there's not going to be much you're going to be able to do about it to reduce it. So that's why we think it's important now, knowing what's coming down the pike, to try to keep the base amounts of these budgets fairly reasonable, so that we can, it won't be such a shock when it hits. We did give you also a listing of the communities that we were able to find information on the websites of the school districts, and the average, I believe, increase of the districts that we found being requested, not what was being given, but the average request of an increase is 2.26%. With the budget that we approved for operating, the operating budget only, it comes to a 2.45%, plus the $246,000 in capital. Last year, the average increase...
One point of clarification, when we refer to the percentage increase requested for this fiscal year going forward by other districts, and the average being 2.26. That's the total amount, so that it would represent both the it's on the total budget.
Yes.
So it's not a distinction between the local request and the state.
No, it's the budget increase as a percentage. 2.26% was the average of the 30 districts.
But I don't think you can look at it at 1 year at a time. If you have a school district, we'll just pick a town, Warren, Rhode Island. If they have continually funded their schools to the tune of 2.5, 2.75, 3%, 2.5, 2.75, year after year after year, then I would agree with you that a request for but when you're of the opinion that I am, that we may not have funded completely and appropriately to the school department over the years, and when you only have a $240,000 increase last year, if you factor in that jabroni thing that we did last year, and then you put in the fact that there was an increase of 1 or 2 percentage points some other year, that's the only increase that we've seen in 5 years. So, you know what, you can pick out, Mr. Clifford, all the best statistics in the world, and you can argue with what you want to argue by selectively picking it out. But I was sitting here on June 2nd. I was told on June 2nd, and nobody objected at that point in time, of the need for the school department when they asked for almost 900,000, you know, it was pretty evident as to where that money was going. 660,000 of it was just contractual obligations, okay? Now, you can talk about, you know, a step 11 teacher coming out and a step 1 teacher going in, and you can talk about this or that. How about the 1.2 million that is estimated just to get to our basic education plan and the full adoption of that? So you keep on putting muddy waters in here. I wish the council president would just get the answer to my question that we started with, was how much money do we have left in this budget right now? And then we can continue the discussion, because this is repetitious. Go ahead.
Why did they pay for an audit?
Whatever.
To bring us to the cap, the 30,177,347, it would be $442,291.
No, she's wrong, that's in the wrong one.
How can you argue with
It's- We were only 83,000 off. I don't know how that could come to that.
Well, I think she's basing it on what has been approved this evening, the adjustments that have been made.
Yes.
Right.
It came to what were the adjustments, the net of the adjustments came to what amount?
I don't have that to bring them.
What do you have right now about the school department? Can you tell me what you have right now about the school department?
Any of the school department, any of the state funding and everything?
Yeah, take the whole thing out.
Take it all out. You want the bottom line, what to get to the cap, or what we've actually
What we've approved.
What we've approved, except for the, because you got everything approved except for 6 line items right now. So,
14,751,306.
Can you repeat it again, please?
14,751,306.
and what is our cap completely? Is it the 39,225,171?
No, the 98%, because we go by the collection rate, would be 30,177,347.
That's not the way I want to do it, because that's confusing me. So if it's confusing me, it's confusing everybody else.
If we,
Well, what I did was I put in all the other state numbers.
If you put in your revenue number at the maximum amount, okay, and put in anything else that you know of that would change on revenue, what are you coming up with at the maximum levy?
On the revenue,
Yeah, all right, it doesn't matter how we do it, revenue or expenditure, it doesn't matter.
well, revenue, would be the same because I'm trying to balance the two budgets. So, in order for.
Are you at 39,225,171 still, as your maximum amount?
30. What do you mean by max amount? The max that we can come to?
Yes, the total.
38,93,512, is that what you're asking me?
No, no revenue.
and I think we just need to know what the net change was that she made. And then add or subtract.
Oh, because I'm still trying to figure out what the maximum was.
This is the max that we can.
So put that in your revenue side. And that's all your revenue. And tell me what the bottom is. All right, so we all in agreement? I don't want to do anything like that. Part of it. All right, then we should be able to approve the license.
That's what I have for my
Madam Finance Director, could you kindly summarize where we're at? Could you kindly summarize where we're at?
What I gave you before, or since I changed it?
What is the total? If you account for all the changes that have been made,
Yes,
and we start off with the total expenditure budget of, and I'll work off the budget committees for argument's sake, 39,161,265. Where are we right now?
before the schools,
Plus
we're
19,000
at
over what you budgeted.
14,751,306, before anything with the school.
Right.
Something around the school.
What the biggest?
31,751.
Mr. President,
Mr. Yadda.
the finance director, I asked her if we went the maximum on the tax levy, which I still think ends up with a tax rate reduction, but that's to be discussed in a few minutes. And all the other amounts of income that we're expecting on this sheet here, the maximum amount your budget could be would be $39,252,341. And we're still agreeing with that. The finance director told us that the non-school side of the budget has been approved already tonight of $14,751,306. So that would leave $24,501,035. 501,035. So, now personally, I don't think that's enough, but that's all you have left unless you want to go back and revisit some other things. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna have. I really don't. Gave them nothing last year. They haven't been going down.
So what is the total expenditures?
I'm not done.
Yeah.
Students in here.